Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to look at the initialize client function, which creates the Bedrock real-time client, and it does this by reading the credentials from the environment. So here at the endpoint URI, the region, the credentials, and it basically just initializes the Bedrock client. It's nothing fancy, basically. Then we have this async function, which initializes the stream, and this calls the invoke model with bidirectional stream to open up the real-time session. And within this function is where we will set the isActive flag to true. So over here, as you can see, we invoke model with bidirectional stream, and we set this to active. Here we have the default system prompt, right now, you are the virtual front desk assistant for the hotel. Compare the data burst with the guest for verification. Be warm, professional, and concise. Do not invent reservations or balances that are not in the database. So feel free to modify your prompt however you want to. Make sure you read it. You make sure that it does the security checks. Tell it to not hallucinate, not make up things, and feel free to change this however you want to. This is not anything special that you haven't seen so far. And what we're going to do here is send the initialization events. So this builds 5 JSON events that are sent to Bedrock in order. So these are going to come handy. Remember when we looked at all these events? So we're going to be using some of them over here now. So let's scroll back. And we were right here. Yep. So what we do is we start the session event where we create a new session, and we have the prompt event, which we get by calling the self.startPrompt function, and that starts a new prompt. Here are my tool configs, audio settings, etc. Then we also have the text content starts, which says I'm about to send system text, like the system prompt. Here it is, here's its ID. Then we also have the text content, which is the actual system prompt text. That's the default system prompt that tells Nova Sonic, you are the receptionist, verify the patient, use the tools. Then we also have the text content end, which says I am done sending the block of system text. So basically this is the open session, define prompt, tools, send system message, and close that content block basically. Okay, so here, this is remember we had our self-defined start prompt because it wasn't given to us. So if you don't remember, if we come back over here, we had this function to start the prompt because, as I mentioned, it was more nuanced. So we didn't, just create it like this. We had to create our own function. I'm going to scroll back. So that's what happened over here. And then, as I mentioned, we have the text content start event. We have the text input event, the content end event, and then we also have the start session event. So these are the init events basically. Okay, so we then gather all of them in the order. We start with the start session, prompt event, text content start, text content, and the text content end. So we have basically started off all of these templates that we set up. And now this loop over here, this loop sends each of these JSON events to the open bidirectional stream, okay? And the sleep 0.1 is just a tiny delay, so you don't blast them all at once. It helps debugging, stability. It's not logically required in theory, but I found it useful. After this, Bedrock knows, okay, a session is open. It knows which model, tools, settings to use, what the system instructions are, and so the model is now basically ready to chat. Okay? And now we start listening for responses and we start processing audio input. And again, we wait a bit to ensure everything is up and ready. Here we have a debug statement, and we accept any errors that might come our way, okay? And actually these two lines, so the start listening for responses and start processing audio input, is where you turn on the two background loops that keep the whole thing alive. So self.response task starts an async task. So self.response task over here, this is that starts an async task that listens for messages from Nova Sonic, listens for audio output, text output, tool use, and saves the task handle so you can later cancel or clean it up. Okay. Now the other one, the async io.create task over here, starts another background task that reads from the audio input queue and sends audio chunks to Bedrock. But you don't need to, store a handle because you never explicitly cancel it by name. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. And then again, the tiny sleep gives a tiny moment to actually start those tasks and settle before you continue. So these parts, even though they're like one line and this is just one line, are critical and they're very crucial. Keep in mind, they are still within the initialize stream function because these are the ones that start listening for responses and start processing the audio outputs, okay? So the next function that we're going to look at in the next video is the async def send raw event function.